Hi, and welcome to Coaching Voices Podcast. I'm Pravin Sharma, an executive and leadership coach and consultant with over 2 decades of experience in the industry. I truly believe in the transformative power of coaching and the profound impact it can have on people's lives. In each episode, we dive into candid conversations with seasoned coaches, exploring what coaching really is and whether it's the right path for you. Together, we uncover how you can unlock your full potential and step confidently into leadership roles within your organization. Today, we have the pleasure of introducing David Lee, the founder and chief collaboration officer of Health Collaboration Partners. David's company, Health Collaboration Partners, helps healthcare startups, nonprofits, and biopharma companies increase funding support, optimize multi-sector collaborations, and enhance the public speaking skills of scientists and experts. David has a remarkable track record of securing over $50 million for more than 100 scientific and medical projects. His expertise in creating impactful public-private partnership has accelerated the impact of numerous organizations. And it's my pleasure to welcome David Lee, who is a healthcare coach, a consultant, and a mentor. Hi, David. How are you this evening?
Hey, good. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent. Thanks for coming to our show. I really appreciate your time. Let's start our conversation with your personal journey into the coaching.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in the healthcare field for about 30 plus years now. Probably worked 75, 80% on the nonprofit side, where I was senior staff or executive director of multiple organizations. Spent 4 years at a biopharma company and have been consulting for about 3 years, which includes coaching, fundraising, support, some project management. So I guess, drawing on my years of leadership experience across sectors. And I guess the other thing that I both coach on as well as have expertise in is setting up, executing, optimizing multi-sector collaborations. So big partnerships that include, in the healthcare space at least, biopharma companies, med device companies, nonprofit patient groups, and professional societies, the federal government, leading clinicians and physicians and other healthcare professionals with expertise and kind of for things that require a number of kind of stakeholders and across the ecosystem to work together towards really big problems. I found that these kinds of partnerships are critical to really make a big impact, as opposed to the impact that maybe one individual organization or even sector can do on their own.
That's great. What inspired you to become a coach?
Yeah, I think, so I've been, obviously working for quite some time, probably have 10 more years left in my, professional career until I hang up my boots. So I think as I, started to kind of think about what I want to do in the last, kind of decade or so of my work, have really focused on giving back both to younger people as mentors, to really utilize my 30 plus years of expertise to help coach folks through difficult situations or creating solutions. And then I like that, kind of personal back and forth. And it's really rewarding, of course, when you have, someone that maybe when you started coaching them had certain things that they needed to work on, and then how you kind of work through those things and help them, improve. And, for me, the biggest compliment is hearing from, say, someone's boss that had hired me to help coach someone. And in this case, I'm thinking about someone that I had coached around kind of public speaking and presentations, and seeing the change in the way that she was kind of tackling things, as well as how her effectiveness was improving based on some of the feedback and coaching that I was able to provide her. So that was really rewarding.
That's really fascinating. Now, I know that, in the beginning, when we leap into our new world,
Mhm.
we'll face some kind of inherent challenges, right?
Mhm.
So, do you have those challenges that you faced in the beginning? And what are the ways that you overcame this challenge? Because, since you've been doing this for a while, you obviously have hurdled those challenges to come
Mhm.
out, clean, right? So, what are the inherent challenges that you faced during that time?
Yeah, I mean, that specific first, dedicated coaching gig was not even anything that I, pursued or thought about. So it was interesting where, a fellow consultant of mine said, "Hey, I've got this client that this, person needs some coaching assistance. I don't have the bandwidth and I don't feel like I have the expertise. Would you like to take this on?" So at first I was like, "Oh man, am I going to actually be able to help this person?" But I think, like most coaches, I think one thing that really helps is if you can kind of put on paper your process. So in this case, it was more putting on paper the process of, how do I prepare for a presentation? In addition to the slides that I need to prepare, what do I think about in terms of who's in the room, how much time I have? Is this an executive audience that probably is going to want to see two slides, or is this a scientific or technical audience that wants to see 60 slides and really delve into the details? So I think a lot of what I did on the front end was kind of thinking through for different audiences and kind of settings, how do I modify my approach? And sometimes I think people find that a lot of this is kind of subconscious. They don't really think about it. But I think once you force yourself to think about it and to kind of put on paper and plot it out, that really helps. And then, I think especially also in, we're given that we've been using Zoom and other virtual platforms for so long, I think there's a lot of kind of things that you can do to maximize that if, say, you're giving a virtual instead of in person presentation. So, things like, hey, everyone that's on this call, please have your cameras on, because the worst feeling, of course, is if you're presenting to 40 people and you only see five faces, the other 35 are dark, and who knows what they're doing. They might not even be listening to you. They might be doing their email. So some of those kinds of things I think really help to get
Yeah.
as much engagement virtually. And then obviously, as we started to go back to in person, I think there was a lot of, rethinking about how we present in person because we were so used to kind of the Zoom presentation model. So I think there's always a lot to be, thinking about as we, look at the different ways that you can, in this case, present and kind of figure out how to put your best foot forward. I think the other thing that I really, emphasized as well was, make sure that you get some natural breaks for questions, because nothing's worse than someone that just, if they've got a 45-minute talk, they literally talk themselves for 35 minutes and then they say, any questions? And it really is not engaging. And I think, people tend to kind of shut off if you're just kind of giving a monologue.
Absolutely. As I was looking through your profile, it's very impressive that you have raised more than $50 million. And then also you do possess the presentation skills as well. So I wanted to ask you about the presentation skills that you
Sure.
have. What are the ways that you do this?
I would say most of the types of talks that I've given
Mhm.
have either been talks at scientific meetings that would be, I might have 30 minutes or I may be part of a panel for 10 minutes.
Mhm.
So that would be, a verbal presentation with slides, but, trying to figure out a way to make it engaging. And then, other things might be, like when I was at that biopharma company, presentation of 40 or 50 colleagues to pitch a project, justify a project, report out on a project that maybe I was leading, in terms of what the, what the impact and outcomes of it was. So I would say lots of different types of presentations, but I would say for the most part, it's mostly been, and I think this is, pretty standard in at least scientific and medical field, that, it's going to be long presentations ish with PowerPoint, with most likely probably you talking, 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 and then kind of having time for some questions. Or there might be, if there's a moderator, say you're doing a plenary session, then it might be a moderator, even other speakers that you might be doing kind of a round table. But I'd say probably 80-90% is the more kind of didactic, and then 10 to 20 is various kinds of either fireside chats or other kind of more informal things that, you'd be speaking verbally with no slides. But I would say, for at least the medical scientific field, kind of death by PowerPoint is our
Yeah.
approach for
Yeah.
sure.
Actually, I was going to ask you that, and that was the direction that I was going
Uh-huh.
to, right? So what I've seen in those presentations are like people try to add so much stuff in the
Mhm.
PowerPoint slide that people are so confused that what you're
Mhm.
trying to say, right? So
Right.
based on your experience, I think
Mhm.
talking point is more important than having all
Mhm.
this what do you call like bells and whistles everywhere into the PowerPoint, make it like more presentable, but you know,
Mhm.
whether or not that works or no is because I think in Amazon they don't even do any kind of PowerPoint presentation there, right? So
Right.
usually what happens is like they give you some assignment to read through it, and then once you read through it, or I think you go to a room and they ask you to read it, and then based on that reading, I mean, the conversation takes. So
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
yeah, yeah, and the reason I want to get that out is because there are lots of leaders who are listening to this that they feel like, well, these are the things that need to have this in the presentation so that it gives some message. But I really hate putting all
Mhm.
those details, making it so hard to understand for the audience to realize that whether or not you're trying to get your message across.
Just gonna say, I think I learned a lot, when I worked for that biopharma company because, as you moved up the, types of leadership that you were presenting to,
Uh-huh,
like,
uh-huh.
to present to senior leadership, you literally might get 6 minutes in one slide.
Yeah,
And of
yeah.
course, that's the hardest thing in the world, right? To boil everything down to one or two slides where, if you've got an hour and 60 slides, you can kind of really go into the details. But then the other thing I guess I learned is that, those senior leaders know that because you've already been through a couple rungs of, leadership discussions that, they trust that you know what you're doing, that you have the KPIs nailed down, all these things. So, that's why you can have a one slide, 6 minute conversation and then, get approval or not approval depending on, what you're presenting. So I think that was also a great learning and things that I was able to, translate to some of the folks that I've helped with presentation skills is thinking about, if you are kind of presenting at that, top level of your organization, whatever that is, that, don't think or expect or hope that you're gonna get 20 minutes and you're gonna delve into all the details. They really want that executive summary.
Yeah, from the very high level, right?
Yep.
Um, David, you came
hmm
from the consulting background and you hopped in the coaching, so you know the both side of the world. What are the
hmm
differentiation that you observed during this consulting versus the coaching, and also the element of the mentoring that you mentioned in the very
Sure.
beginning? What are the certain thing that distinguish between consulting, coaching, and mentoring?
Yeah, I think in a way, at least the way that I work and the way that I work with clients is there is actually a lot of overlap. So, as an example, on the nonprofit side, I'm the fractional kind of fundraising lead for a couple of different nonprofits. So, I'm leading some discussions where I'm talking to prospective funders, I'm mentoring slash coaching, fellow colleagues that are within the organization. I'm working, in collaboration with, say, the CEO, executive director of that organization. So I think, in the fundraising kind of work that I do, it is a little bit of a combination of I lead some things, I'm supporting, coaching others. They're supporting, coaching me because, the hard part, of course, is as you come into a new organization, you've got to learn the culture of the organization, the subject matter of the organization. So, for instance, I've been in the osteoporosis field for about 13 years, and I'm working with a group that is focused on migraine and headaches. And I mean, I knew a little bit about migraine and headaches, but it was, among the first things I wanted to do was to really learn the disease state. So, I think the way that, like coming into an organization where maybe I don't have the domain knowledge, I lean on the physicians and other medical professionals that are, say, on the board, the staff that of course know the area very well. So it's an interesting kind of mix that even if it's something that on its face looks like it's a pure consulting gig, I feel like there's a lot of elements of both mentorship, support, coaching, And because, I think what's nice about the kind of work like that, that's like, fractional work where I am in a sense like a 1 or 2 day a week employee, is that also you've got that kind of team because, consulting can be lonely sometimes if it's just you and you're delivering things for clients and then kind of moving on to the next thing. So I think also what's nice about the fractional work is they tend to be longer term engagements and you really get to know, both the programs of the organization, the stakeholders, et cetera. So that's what's kind of neat about kind of fractional work that does kind of blend consulting with some of the mentor and coaching pieces.
Okay. Okay. All right. That sounds really good. Now, going back into the coaching, is because this is the topic that we want to focus on, right?
Yep.
So, what are the qualities that you think are pretty much needed to become a good coach? Or, think about this, for instance, that somebody's trying to hop into this coaching career and they're looking for some kind of guidance that if I have all these things together, and certain things I don't have, I can build it, right? But
Right.
certain things that you should have to consider that coaching career, what kind of advice you have for them?
Yeah, I think what I found is that doing a diagnostic on the front end, so first getting input from the person you're coaching, because, sometimes, acquiring a coach isn't maybe the choice that the person you're coaching would ask for. It might be like, my boss is making me do this. But I think I found in pretty much every instance that I've, had a few of those situations that usually as they reflect, they're like, well, actually, this part of presentations I do struggle with. And then I think even in addition to kind of diagnosticing the things that they want to work on with the individual, also hearing from, their supervisor or other people in their organization, in terms of the perception of what they feel their teammate needs to work on. So I think the more data you can gather, the better. But then I think at the end of the day, you need to really, service your client, which is the person that you're coaching, and, provide them with some of that feedback, hopefully kind feedback. But I think, sometimes these are things that don't come up or people aren't willing to communicate directly. So coaching is definitely an interesting function because, you're ultimately trying to help this person improve. But usually, or sometimes at least, it's based on someone within your organization, usually your boss, going, she needs some help on X and Y, and let's get, a professional expert that isn't here at the organization that has kind of a fresh eye on things that maybe we're not seeing and because obviously your boss is going to be trying to help you improve certain aspects of, in this case, say presentation skills. And sometimes they don't have the bandwidth or the skill set, or maybe they feel like they're too biased. So I think that's also a, opportunity for folks out there that are either are coaches or are contemplating being coaches to kind of identify, ways that you can kind of find your clients, based on, help that folks need within an organization.
Yeah, finding a client is another kind of like monumental task for a lot of people who became a coach. And this is where I see some kind of like a disconnect in there, is that initially people go into this career, they become a coach, and then also like coaching industry not that regulated, so you don't need to have any kind of certification. Everybody calls themselves a life coach. You go to one school, came out of it, school gives you some certificate, all of a sudden you're a life coach or a health. Well, many kind of coaches out there, right? So once you get out of the school, once you're out from the academy, now the monumental task for you is to find the clients. Right. So a lot of people quit because they're not successful in getting clients. Right. This year I made like $200 versus I should have made like $200,000. Right. So where are the clients? With the right client, you can obviously make like 7 figures, whatever, But since that's not happening, you felt like, well, I got to pay the bills. I cannot stick to this career because I'm not getting any kind of lead, any kind of traction. What advice you have for those people who want to continue their coaching career and try to get the right clients for them to sustain their life?
Yeah, I guess the thing that I've learned in my consulting is, initially I feel like I was kind of telling people, I can do all of this stuff. I can coach, I can do project management, I can do executive leadership. I think what I found is as I started to niche down, which, obviously healthcare is still a very big field, but as I niche down to a couple of key skills. So for me, it's, you know, coaching, mostly around presentations and, approaches to healthcare innovation, and then fundraising, and then a bit around this multi-sector collaboration. I feel like I was starting to, kind of narrow my funnel so that I had something I could kind of get my arm around. So I think that was my evolution. And even though it was a little bit scary, because I think initially I was like, hey, I want to cast the widest net. I want everyone to think that, I can do whatever they need. But I think if you niche down and get really specific on your expertise and how it relates to coaching, that is going to really help you, because then that's also going to enable you to kind of have something that is a little more specific. And then I think too, if you can focus in on, it might be, hey, I focus on small organizations up to X million dollars in revenue. Like I find on the fundraising side that, for nonprofits, let's say, I don't know, the American Diabetes Association doesn't need a 501st fundraiser, but an organization that maybe has 8 staff, that's kind of my sweet spot is, a group that I could help a day a week that, I'm going to really, be able to kind of show them return on investment, because that, small investment in terms of one day a week as opposed to hiring a new full-time person can have more impact than, an organization that has a whole division of fundraising and already probably has all the right people and doing the right things strategically. So I think that's the other thing to think about is kind of, maybe focusing on a certain size of organization, and even within your field, more specificity around, either businesses that are certain phases. So like for the work that I do on the private sector side, I tend to work with either bootstrapping or pre-seed startups as opposed to say series B or C, because once again, they've done all the work. They've already raised millions of dollars. But I think I'm better in that kind of early stage where, the organization can get a lot of bang for their buck with me as a, 3 to 6 month, let's say, very part-time person versus, a BD department and a chief commercial officer and all kinds of other folks that, you're going to need to have as you get to that kind of larger size, and, as you're generating more revenue from from an investment, venture capital perspective.
Got it. So you get engaged until the seed money is gone, and then people start to have that organic blend of money that's coming in.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think that's what I learned was just that, really getting specific on the types of ideal clients, and then I think also honestly, having conversations and maybe realizing that, this person that you're talking to that might even want to hire you, maybe you're not the right fit. So, it's hard to say, hey, I don't want business, but I think I've learned the hard way a few times that I, did a couple of engagements that I was like, this wasn't a great fit. I'm going to give it a try. And then, you kind of learn that maybe you need to stay within your domain. And when you go outside, sometimes there are some things that are translatable, but I think you learn that there are other things that maybe aren't as translatable. So that's a, good learning too. And not the easiest thing to do, right? To be disciplined and say, no, I don't want this piece of business because I don't think it's a good fit for my, skill set. And, I think back to the fact that I've got 10-ish more years, like my goal is to work as much as I can with people and organizations that I think can make a real impact. I don't want to just spin my wheels, even if it's like, hey, I'm making money, why should I care? But, at the end of the day, I think everyone wants to be able to feel that impact. I mean, obviously you need to pay the bills and you want to be successful, but I think creating that impact and seeing that impact is something that's, at this phase of my career especially, is probably more important than it was maybe when I was, 10, 20 years younger.
I was going to ask you that question. I think you already answered it. I was going to ask you about what is the most rewarding aspect of your journey as a coach, and I think you just answered that, right? So, money is one, but the satisfaction that comes with the work that we do is it's invaluable. coming back to the coaching again, do you do like group coaching or do you do like, team coaching, group coaching, or do you do like individual coaching?
To date, I've done individual, and I think it's something even that I always have struggled and thought about is that right now all of the consulting and coaching that I do is very much one to one, and obviously there are some consultants that figure out ways to like productize their services or create, say, like a course that maybe might have a group coaching aspect or some kind of like you might say, all right, everyone watch module one, and then on Friday, we're going to have a Zoom call to kind of talk about it and work through it. So I think, at least right now, I've really focused on kind of one-to-one individualized. But, the challenge as a solo entrepreneur right now is you obviously only have so much bandwidth, so many hours in the day. And if you want to make greater impact, figuring out a way, which I haven't quite yet, of productizing or, impacting 5 or 10 individuals / organizations at once would be really valuable, because I do think a coach that really knows what they're doing, of course they want to impact tens of thousands of people, not
Yep. Yep.
30, 50 people a year, right? Depending on how they kind of set up their coaching, how intensive it is, how many folks at any given time they can coach. And then I would say just from a capacity perspective, you probably can't coach 40 individuals and keep track of kind of everyone's individual challenges and goals. So I think, you've also got to really think about, what's the maximum that I can take on, and of course, do an effective job, have enough time to have one-on-ones and other ways to engage. So that's always a hard piece, I think, for any solo entrepreneur that's coaching or consulting, is figuring out what the right mix of I've got enough work, not too much, but of course also not too little, because I've got to hit whatever revenue goals I have.
How do you measure success in your line of work?
Yeah, I think it's a couple faceted. I mean, obviously, ultimately I have certain, revenue and income goals that I have, so I want to hit those first. But I think for me, it's, showing and evidencing that impact, however it's measured. It might be purely financial. Hey, with my client, we raised $500,000. Hey, we just got this $150,000 grant. But then, of course, the money isn't just the money. The money enables an organization to make impact. So now seeing that, hey, that $150,000 grant that I got has now enabled my client to create a new microsite, drive 10,000 more patients to their webpage, which led to X more people that got diagnosed with, the disease that they're focused on. So I think that's what I like to see is, because just the pure financial bottom line, doesn't really tell the story. I mean, obviously it's competitive out there, so you feel good when, of course, you quote unquote win a grant and maybe the other 49 organizations that pursued it didn't. And obviously many times it's the other direction, right? Where it didn't, you weren't awarded the grant, but someone else was. So it is a bit of a numbers game, of course, any kind of fundraising. And then I think too, just creating new, new partnerships or new relationships, like, and I think that's the other neat part of being older now is that like my network, they talk about the 6 degrees of separation. It's almost like 2 degrees of separation now within the health field. Like to look at my LinkedIn now and I'm like, oh, this person that I worked with 15 years ago that was at company X is now, the CEO of a small biotech, the chief medical officer of a large, pharma company. So I think just having that network. So I think the other learning, of course, is that you never want to burn your bridges because
the relationship.
I mean, your network is kind of, just so important. And of course, if you continue to do good work as a consultant coach, as well as, initially I would say like my first year meant most of my clients were people that I had worked with in some capacity, maybe not as a consultant coach, but, either colleagues or folks that were involved in some of these large partnerships that I ran. So of course, really was helpful that first year, and it almost kind of felt easy. And, year two wasn't quite as easy. And now, for whatever reason, year three, people are finding me now, which is a neat change for
Yeah.
sure. Because I
Yeah.
feel like I was having to find, especially in year two, kind of my clients.
Yeah.
And now
Yeah.
it's kind of flipped a bit. And, knock on wood, hopefully it continues.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you're talking about the numbers. Obviously, when
Mhm.
it comes to the numbers, you see happy faces as well as sad faces too. Because
Yep.
if you did not get there, then whether or not the needle has moved or no. So that's how we're doing the KPIs and stuff like that.
Yep.
Now, how coaching help you to
Mhm.
calm down those difficult clients?
Yeah, so I would say, like with that coaching client I mentioned, the presentation, there were definitely times where we were prepping for a meeting and, things that maybe her colleagues
Hmm.
she wasn't getting. So I think I was able to kind of help her figure out kind of how to tackle that and how to, maybe approach that team member or kind of go, all right, well, I'm just going to do it. And, you're not going to be able to present that section because you didn't kind of hit your deliverables. So I think that's an example of how, I was able to kind of, because, office politics and all of that is always interesting and nuanced. And, sometimes people are passive aggressive or there's other reasons or they're busy or life events are happening. So I think what I've also learned is that as much as you can, you try to give people the benefit of the doubt and not think that they have nefarious motives if they're not maybe engaged or not on the same page. So I think that's an important lesson, that sometimes having someone external to you is helpful to kind of navigate or figure out just new and different approaches.
Yeah, that's rare quality that is relatively harder to find, and not everyone, I believe, possess that level of diplomacy for sure.
Hmm.
And having that coach ready kind of mentality definitely
Hmm.
help you in navigating these kind of difficulties for sure.
Hmm.
David, time just flies, and we're coming towards an end, and I cannot believe it. I mean, we're going like 900 miles an hour at this time. So towards the end, this floor is you. If you want to talk about something that you felt like, well, I want to talk, but probably interrupted me in the middle and I couldn't get it out. So feel free to do that.
Great. So I guess one little plug. So I work with a organization called Feminnovation, which is a platform for femtech founders. We sponsor a monthly fundraising webinar for anyone interested specifically in fundraising in a startup kind of setting or women's health femtech. It's a really great series that I think we provide tools and perspectives around how do you pursue funding from, say, the federal government,
Mm-hmm.
venture capital, angels, individuals, the biotech field. Those will start up again next month.
Okay.
Um, Actually, the next one is on September 23rd, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely, if people want to find me on LinkedIn, you can find that information. But I would say, in terms of the learning, kind of partnering with Fem Innovation has really helped, I think, fan my kind of stature in the field, and that we've got this monthly webinar series that people are coming to, and it has led to new connections in terms of prospective clients, people that need that fundraising help and coaching help. So would just say too, for folks that maybe are thinking about how do I get my name out beyond my LinkedIn page and maybe my website, maybe partnering with some other organization that already has a natural kind of platform of people that are engaged is something that I really appreciated the opportunity to be part of, and also to kind of be part of that community and to have a natural audience, as opposed to, hey, if I do an ask me anything on LinkedIn, will two people show up? I don't know. So I think we were able to probably get between 40 and 100 on each of those webinars. So I would say, in terms of a strategy, that might be something for folks to think about it, because I think it really did provide a lot of value for me as a way to kind of get out there, in addition to the thought leadership and all the things that everyone should be doing as a coach, independent consultant, to kind of show your value and your knowledge to prospective clients.
David, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for coming to our show.
Thanks a lot. All right, I really appreciate the opportunity.
That was David Lee in conversation with Pravin Sharma at Insight Ignite Coaching's Coaching Voices podcast. You can contact David at david@healthcollaborationpartners.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Coaching Voices podcast. I hope today's conversation gave you valuable insights into the world of coaching and leadership. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. It helps others find the show and supports us in continuing to bring you inspiring content. Do not forget to share this episode with anyone you think might benefit from the discussion. And if you're looking to explore coaching further or have any questions, please feel free to connect with us. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and stay curious.